Dr. Ma here, Dr. Harte, next here, Chimi, yeah. So I'm going to sit in the middle. I want to be happy, and I wanted to really look into this conversation. Let me recall, yesterday Andrew said, there is knowledge, there is money. How can you bring to help Bhutan? But I thought best thing I can do is sit here on my right with the banker, on my left with the investor, and to science knowledge on the extreme point. So I'm myself very comfortable. Now, we did agree yesterday on how we are going to proceed today's session. So we said each speaker will take around 5 to 6 minutes. That makes around 20 minutes, I would assume. And to make our audience happy, we are giving you 25 minutes to have a direct conversation with my eminent speakers here. So please do take this advantage. First, allow me to go straight to Chimi. You have 5 minutes to go.
First of all, very good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. Very good afternoon. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Tarayana Foundation, Georgetown Institute of Advanced Studies for giving this opportunity to talk about Bhutan and carbon market. But before that, let me briefly touch upon Paris Agreement, climate finance, and then I'll come to carbon market. Because without understanding Paris Agreement, without knowing Paris Agreement, without knowing climate finance, we are not going to learn about, we are not going to actually educate ourselves about carbon market. And I'll be talking about carbon market from the context of Bhutan. Bhutan's unique national circumstances are being taken care of. So, Paris Agreement in 2015, global leaders came together. And then they have discussed, negotiated, and decided on a long-term temperature goal to limit the global temperature rise to well below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And in order for do that, in order for countries to achieve that, of course, like different countries will respond differently. For developed country, they have the resources, they have the capacity, they have the finance to reach that goal. And for developing countries like Bhutan, least developed countries, we don't have resources and capacity. So for that, around same time, they have discussed, negotiated, and then agreed on the climate finance goal to mobilize $100 billion by 2020. Last year, we call it a finance goal. There we have discussed about the climate finance, new collective quantified climate finance goal. So the report says they have not just achieved, in fact, they have overachieved. Personally, for me, that's a blatant lie. And last year, what happened was, since it was a climate finance goal, UN Climate Conference, they have set a new collective quantified goal. Today, if you look at the reports, the climate finance requirement for the developing countries and the least developed countries is $1.5 trillion by 2035 annually. And last year, global communities agreed $300 billion to be mobilized by 2035. So now, where does that $1.3 trillion will come from? So let's say we get first, it will be from the bilateral contributions, for example, like developed countries contributing to developing countries, and then multilateral, for example, like MDBs, World Bank, ADBs, and then like climate finance facilities like GCF, GEF, loss and damage funds, so on and so forth. And the next bigger chunk of the finance will come from private sector. That's where the mechanisms such as carbon market is going to play a greater role to mobilize and also to unlock potentials of private sector financing of the climate actions. So in case of Bhutan, so let's look at Bhutan. We have been talking about a lot of good things about environmentalism. Our country is not just carbon neutral, we are carbon negative. Our constitution, we take it for granted, 60% of our trees are constitutionally protected. You look at any other constitution, you'll never find such kind of a strong, dedicated constitution in the world. Protected areas, more than 50% of our countries is protected area. So we talk a lot of good things about the environmentalism, sustainability, so on and so forth. But what we are getting out of it, we need to monetize. The key is we need to monetize what we have been doing so far, you know? And then the next question is the market mechanism that Bhutan has been trying to tap into. Last year in Baku, after 9 years of negotiation, the market mechanism, Article 6, which is also known as International Carbon Market Mechanism, concluded. Now it's time for us to operationalize it. In case of Bhutan, I'm proud to say that we are top 20 countries globally ready to participate, infrastructure-wise, policy-wise. What we have done? We have a carbon market rules, carbon market policy, that sets the carbon asset development process within Bhutan. We have national carbon registry. In fact, this is the fundamental infrastructure that will ensure transparency and the credibility and traceability of the carbon credits. So I think I have just 1 minute left. Let me conclude with this note. I can discuss about some of the structural barriers, some of the institutional barriers, and also some of the issues regarding climate finance and carbon market. I can talk about that. We have discussed about Bhutan's forests being not able to monetize. We cannot monetize considering current structures, current structure. I can come to that. But I want to conclude with the note that we have done fair share of what world has asked us to do. If you look at the emission data of Bhutan, we are carbon negative by 9.7 million tons. If you do a math, currently carbon markets in the Article 6 fetch around $20 to $25. Let's say conservatively $10 multiplied by 9.7. Annually, we are contributing to the global mitigation effort freely, no returns, $100 million. No developed countries would have contributed to $100 million annually without return, sure. So that 100 million, if it translates to economic opportunity, we would have constructing a hydropower size of Dagashu hydropower project. So with that note, I would like to conclude here that we have done enough, and it's time for us to advocate to the international community to show us the money. So I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. So I'm just starting with the knowledge and science. So we have just heard from Chimi. Can I go to Michael? And I'm sure you will be talking mostly on the forest sequestration components. Thank you, Michael. 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank Andrew and John for their very kind invitation. I come from a place where the science, the law, and the finance misses out the ingredient of soul. And what I've learned in the last 2 days is that may be the biggest contribution you have yet to make. And we should all start from a place where we're in debt. We're in debt to nature. And there is a liability that can only really be defined scientifically. And we have the science-based targets approach for that. We have the World Resource Institute greenhouse gas risk assessment approach. We've got hundreds of different protocols, codes, and frameworks that, quite frankly, are failing markets. The ETS schemes, the cap and trade schemes set up by governments for emissions trading are not working. They are, at best, issuing permission certificates to pollute to companies like Tesla, who make $4 billion a year out of their $5 billion profit from trading certificates given to them by the government to sell them to polluting companies. The voluntary carbon market hasn't actually transacted anything of virtue. So if we're looking as a country such as Bhutan into the markets to try and find value for the surplus that you state that you have, you are not going to find long-term value there, and there will be no happiness if it is traded away. So what I would urge is a new approach which Andrew has already set the foundations. So within the context of the defined happiness approach that you have, the One Earth balance sheet that you can adopt. With the instruments that have been proposed by the social stock exchange, in identifying existing instruments you've already built within the carbon market here, you have a self-sovereign identity. You have a sovereign fund, you have token. You've completed a transaction under Article 6 with Singapore for water, and that has established clear value and clear sovereign asset in long term. But I think we need a framework that also looks at the liabilities that exist from the past and in the present, and how the assets that are going to be built into the future are for the benefit of the next 7 generations, for their happiness. And so none of the market structures that exist will serve you well. Now, the ETS trade program will not help. And I think they are going to be radically reformed anyway, given the US pulling out of the UN system as it relates to carbon markets. With the EPA now completely beholden to oil and gas interest, that is not going to serve us well. The state of the political economy in the US is that the best they can do is put up tariffs, and that a foreign pollution tax act has been promulgated in the Senate and will make its way to Congress. So what I would urge is partnership with your neighboring countries, partnership around the definition and stock take of where your assets and liabilities are, and move forward with pride that you can define a soul-bound token that instantiates both the liabilities and assets that exist in this country and how you're going to grow them on a One Earth balance sheet.
Thank you, Michael. Keeping on time, well said. Now I want to turn to Harry. I think you have heard from him, his investment in parks. I think he has more to share. Harry, floor is yours.
Is this one working? Thank you very much, Tasho. Again, I'm very proud to be here, and Michael has presented a very sobering, and he's representing reality. Having said that, at the moment, we don't have a lot of alternatives. And how we make use of the few alternatives, as problematic as they may be, they're worth pursuing. And what I'd like to present to you is what we have done since we leveraged off the habitat and the UNESCO Man Biosphere. Since that time, we have now protected close to 350,000 hectares of primary forest in Malaysia. I'll clarify that in a minute as to what I mean by a protected area. In 2023, in partnership with the Crown Prince of the state of Pahang in Malaysia, we launched the first tiger reserve in Malaysia. And in this context, we protected 134,000 hectares. But in reality, what we're looking at is a protected area of over 650,000 hectares, because it is abutting the national park. Unique in this sense is that the Tiger Reserve not only seeks to protect and enhance the critically endangered Malayan tiger, the Tiger Reserve is actually the source of almost 30% of fresh water for the southern part of Malaysia. So there's a lot of contiguous issues that play into this. Now, it is a protected area, but we have negotiated a management contract. Tiger reserves are unique. We had the great benefit of using India as an example, and India has been very responsive to Malaysia in providing assistance, technology, good practices, all of which we have employed. So the next question comes up is, how do you finance a tiger reserve? And that responsibility lies on us who hold the management rights. So what we've done is raised philanthropic funding. So over the past 18 months, we have raised $35 million to manage the park, which is wonderful. That gives us enough time to manage the park for approximately 10 years. However, in reality, we would never have been able to raise the funding if we did not identify income sources that would replace philanthropic sources. So through that, what we have identified is a carbon market, because we have degraded areas within the Tiger Reserve, agroforestry, and of course working with the indigenous communities. Right? And through that, we're able to generate carbon income, agroforestry income, and ecotourism income. Yep. Okay, moving on from that is the second project, which is a pure for-profit project, and that is a carbon project. And it's a 110,000 hectare peat swamp. The reason I call it a protected area is that over our 60-year lease, we are doing everything that we have to do in order to qualify for the trading of carbon credits, meaning we have to either reforest, introduce agroforestry, work with local social communities, protect the biodiversity. It's a profit-generating operation, but between the Crown Prince and my family office, we have pledged that 60% of all revenues will be redeployed back to our mission, which is the environment, education, and heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Now, I want to turn to Dr. Ma, looking for some bankable projects. Dr. Ma, your floor is yours.
Maybe this one. Yeah, thank you very much, Dasha, and I should thank Andrew for bringing me here, my first trip to Bhutan, to discuss this very interesting concept of gross national happiness, and now coming to the financing the happiness part, which is a topic that I've been working on for the last 11 years. I was in the banking sector as an economist for 20 plus years until 2014, when I joined the Chinese Central Bank as a chief economist. So from then, I began to lead the drafting of the Chinese green finance policy. And since then, I think it's now about 10 years, China has developed the largest green lending market and the largest green bond market. The outstanding amounts of green loans and green bonds in China is 43 trillion RMB, which is close to $6 trillion. And these financial instruments fueled the massive growth of renewable energy, electric vehicle, and all the green stuff. Now, for smaller developing countries, I think the key is not necessary to develop your complete local green financial system. It's too complex. It involves taxonomy, disclosure, all kind of products and incentives and so on. As Chimi just said, you need to utilize international money, especially private sector money. Now, for doing that, because the majority of the private sector money coming from other countries to put down, we'll be looking for bankable projects. They need to get the principal back and some return. So bankability becomes the key. I've been seeing a lot of developing countries presenting projects, 90% of which are not bankable. They are green, right? They help environment to reduce emission, reduce pollution, but they're not bankable. They don't have return. And let me give you just one example of how we actually develop a bankable project, which is seemingly unbankable in China. That's we grow grass on the desert in Inner Mongolia. Growing grass itself doesn't make any money, right? It become a charity project, and China doesn't have that much of money growing grass on the vast in the desert land. But we did 3 things to generate income. Number 1, we put solar panel on the grass, which is on top of the desert. Solar can make money because sell electricity. Secondly, we raise chicken under the solar panel. We can sell the chicken meat, second income. Thirdly, we grow the Chinese herbs, which is high value added agro-business. So 3 income, and together potentially carbon credit, because growing grass on desert can generate carbon reduction, yeah? So 4 incomes, which makes the project very, very bankable. A lot of private sector money can come in. Now, there are many, many other areas we can do the same thing. For example, I had a little example of jute, which is a plantation, right? I think could be planted here, and that can be used as a raw material to produce packaging material that replace plastics. And that itself is environmentally friendly and may potentially generate some carbon credit as well. So these are the type of ideas we need in designing projects for Bhutan, whether it's agriculture or forestry or even tourism. On the tourism side, let me give you one example of what I did in East Timor. I went there last year and helping them developing the idea of bringing Chinese tourists there. We probably can schedule something to bring 1 million Chinese tourists, which is 1% of Chinese outbound tourism, to the island country. And then all the projects in infrastructure related to tourism become bankable because these tourists will pay for the hotel, they pay the airport, they pay the electricity, they pay the water. And by doing so, we can make a lot of seemingly unbankable projects bankable. So I do hope that we can have the opportunity to explore with our ministers, with Chimo and others, what are the bankable projects here that can be utilizing external money, including China financing, and potentially Hong Kong, Macau with a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you so much for keeping to the time. Now, floor is yours. We are opening for questions, reactions, observations from the distinguished participants. Thank you. Anyone up? Daniel.
May I just build on what Dr. Marjun has just said and also answer directly Dorji's question on where's the money? Show me the color of the money, which is a very pertinent question. And I'd like to focus on just one aspect, which is carbon trading. Now, in fact, when I was invited to this conference, I had prepared a presentation electronically on carbon trading, noting the synergies between Bhutan as a carbon negative economy and China, which is the complete opposite. And we've heard some figures. I think we've heard some figures about the total trading value last year, which is 43 billion RMB, which is about 6 billion US. And this is exactly the figure that I have from my sources. Now, why do I mention this and how do we translate it into money, income, something meaningful, impactful for Bhutan and Bhutan's economy? Carbon trading started in China in the year 2008 in Tianjin. China is way ahead of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is way behind. But the reason why China started carbon trading in Tianjin in 2008 is because China is the last remaining manufacturing superpower. And in terms of its practices, there are a lot of issues that have arisen which need addressing and balancing in terms of the carbon footprint and in terms of the global balance. So in 2009, the second carbon market started in Beijing. In 2010, the third carbon trading market started in Shanghai. Today, there are 8 different regional carbon markets all over China. There is a national carbon market, which started in the year 2023, but they're all fragmented. There's now a policy which we in Hong Kong, that is Financial Services Development Council, the hat I'm wearing temporarily now, proposed to the central government, and the central government agreed to use Hong Kong as the consolidator for carbon trading in terms of interfacing with the external world. We were looking at Indonesia, we're looking at the European Union, but the synergies between Bhutan and China are immense. And because of Hong Kong's regulatory transparency and Hong Kong's market depths, it is thought that Hong Kong is the best place to do this. Now, I'm not going to take up more time because this is a very technical and deep issue. I'm happy to share the details offline, and I'm happy to share my electronic presentation, but there are enormous opportunities, economic, financial opportunities for Bhutan using its massive carbon credits, because Bhutan is a carbon sink vis-a-vis China.
Thank you very much. Okay, Pen Sring at the back. I like to really hear precise and concise questions, and even the comments also. Let's leave it to that. Pen, please.
This is, I guess, targeted at something Chimi alluded to earlier. So I'll be very, I'll say who I'm hoping to hear from. This is regarding this question of reforestation versus the existing coverage, let's say, that Bhutan has, right? At COP, at the various COPs now, we have encountered this ridiculous situation where countries like Bhutan that have 60 or 70% of forest coverage are not being recognized for it, let alone rewarded. And yet, of course, it's because the developed world is writing the rules, right? But they're talking about providing credits for reforestation. Now, this seems to incentivize us, let's say in Bhutan, to gut all our forests and then plant trees again. But the world, of course, can't afford it. So how do we course correct this ridiculous situation?
Thank you. Michael, you want to respond or you don't want? Okay.
I identify your frustration. Unfortunately, the science says that for a temporary removal from forestry or nature-based, whether it's mangrove or peat, it has to be additional. And that's the biggest hurdle that you need to overcome. It seems to me that the statistics that were shared, we've lost some 10, 15, 20% over the last decade here through the addition of roads or the clearing for farming or urban areas. So there was a natural attrition of that natural forest. With timber management, you can clear what would have been native forest and reforest it, and yes, be eligible for those new high integrity additional permanent forests. And it's not a bad thing to cull old forest, because the nature of the life cycle of a tree is that the sequestration is stored in the roots and the biomass in the soil. And by cutting some of the trees selectively through that forest, you can renew it. And the renewal of that permanent forest is a permanent credit. And so your forestry management methods need to adapt to that new model.
In our, please, briefly, yes.
Now, this is a hugely complex issue, which I don't think anyone can explain within 1 minute, but just to say, I've been sitting on the board of ICVCM, Integrity Council of Voluntary Carbon Market, which sets the global standards on voluntary carbon market. And after so many years of studies on how to prevent greenwashing, they do come to the conclusion that the voluntary carbon market is aimed to encourage new efforts to create additional carbon reduction and removal. Now, if it's not new efforts, not additionality, then it should not be counted. The reasons are very complex, I won't explain, right? So there is an international agreement, and there's a reason for that, for the definition. Now, one sentence reaction to Daniel's comment on Hong Kong's role in implementing the Article 6.2. I think, yes, Hong Kong and Macau, they're actually in a better position than mainland China to play international role of connecting the potential carbon credit investors, both domestically within Hong Kong, Macau, and globally, to countries that need the financing.
Thank you for the question, and I would like to maybe discuss around some of the structural issues and barriers, and that's exactly why we are discussing today. So it's so interesting, it's so interesting, like Bhutan have been protecting forest for ages, and now in the market, that market is basically not designed for a country like Bhutan. It's designed for countries like those countries who are actually cutting down the tree and then replantation, and then you're getting revenue out of it. So ideally, if you look at how the market structures are being designed, it's definitely not designed for countries like Bhutan. And we talk about the additionality issues, right? We talk about the additionality issue. The definition of additionality is the project doesn't actually exist without putting in money for the carbon project. So that's actually the definition of additionality. So that is why we need to think about how we can break through such kind of issue like additionality issues and compensate. When we say like show us the money, that doesn't mean like it's for the charity of Bhutan. We are saying it to partner with us. We are saying to collaborate with us, do project with us, and have your share. So that's what we mean by when we say like show us the money. It's not a charity. Nobody's going to give you money for the free. So responding to your question,
I think they have heard you clearly, exactly. So let me actually give more time for our floor to actually bring that question up. I think there's a lot of issue that will come up so that we can again add to that. So let's hear. Okay.
Thank you very much. The question I have is, with whatever little bit that I've dabbled with raising money or mobilizing funds, one little struggle that I faced is much of the funding which is available is either available for sustainability or it is available for social work. When you look at spirituality, I felt that there's very little understanding of it and very little money that is available for that, particularly when we are not looking at spirituality in the religious terms. So either we have religious funding, which comes for a particular propagation of religion, which is not what we are trying to do. Or then there is social work funding, which says, no, we are not going to give it to religions. So where is spirituality in this entire mobilizing finance?
I mean, that question is well noted. So we are not really qualified to comment or speak on that, question. I think we need to take note of that kind of, propositions that's coming from. Any? Okay, just to break the ice, I mean, let's be very fair. The rules are made by the developed countries. I think that is not really correct in many sense. In the negotiation, in the rule making, we are all party to that. We have our own groups. So if you are not coordinating, collaborating your members, definitely developed countries will dominate because they will drive their own interests. So in particular, I think rule setting that currently is going on, I think, which is a work in progress, Article 6.8, I think these are some of the areas you have an opportunity to engage. So engage, not as a country, but as a group. This is where we are actually looking ahead. Okay, since there are no more coming, again, I give it to Chimi. You wanted to respond to the additionality or deforestation. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to share what we have been doing in terms of monetizing our forest resources in the form of carbon credit, taking price to the amount of carbon dioxide emission that we reduce or remove. So we are, the Department of Forest and Park Services, they are doing one project which is called High Forest, Low Deforestation Projects. So they are currently being registered with the Harte standard to actually create carbon credits. And the initial estimates, which is very conservative, says like for around like backtracking till 2021, it will generate around 1.2 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So I just wanted to inform that there are methodologies and there are standards who actually value such kind of the existing forest as well. And the question is, we have to break through these kind of additionality issues. And of course, like Brazil is doing it. The Brazil have a mechanism where the protected forests are being monetized. Every hectares, not cutting down the trees, you'll be getting $4. And they will be presenting this time in Brazil, Belém Corp. And if there is some positive news, it will be good for us. So there are mechanisms to how to do that. And for a country like Bhutan, we should actually try to make it relevant to Bhutan. And what we have been doing is also through a mechanism, a facility called Bhutan Climate Fund. It's a very broad functions there, but the real intention is to monetize net negative emission of Bhutan and also to aggregate, because Bhutan is small and scale-wise, it's not going to be relevant to international carbon market. So in order for Bhutan to be relevant to the international carbon market, we have a facility called Bhutan Climate Fund, which will aggregate projects, which will also aggregate credits. And it will act as an intermediary selling and purchasing of the carbon credits so that it can be relevant to the rest of the world. And at the same time, the question of gross national happiness, the value-driven development system that we are currently trying to also infuse into the market mechanism. Of course, this ideology-wise is completely different. Through benefit sharing mechanism, His Majesty instructed us to ensure that profits, revenue generated from carbon credits needs to be equally shared to every single individuals of the country. We can do it that. It's just 700,000 of us.
Chimi, let's have some engagements from the floor. Thank you for your insights into happiness. That is what we are working on it. I still want to hear from our distinguished participants and particularly in the line with what we are working on it. I mean, Chimi rightly said that we are carbon negative. And our farmers at the field, they are protecting. And what are they really getting it? Nothing. So this is something I think we need to really look into it. But if you have DG, Dr. Pema, thank you.
Okay, I'll be very brief as you have directed. Isn't it time for us to think beyond carbon? Because when you say ecosystems and ecosystem services, I think one thing that matters to all of us is water and the role of forest in creating water, in water capture, regulation, in the hydrological cycle is, I think, so much more important as well. And for upstream countries like Bhutan, conservation of our forest for its function in providing water, the ecosystem service of water, I think is probably more important also, as important. So therefore, I just want to ask Dr. Ma, and also Michael, whether we could actually explore the possibility of financing the water services of our forests. Thank you.
Maybe I'll give you a hypothetical project in Bhutan, which can probably address quite a few issues from Jimmy, from you, and from spirituality question. Let's say we develop a national park, and currently it's not fully covered. Part of the land is actually available to plant new trees, okay? And for that part, it qualifies additionality. It will have carbon credit, yeah. But carbon credit alone is not going to be enough to finance the entire development of this part of a new national park. You need to have additional income. Where are the income should be coming from? Now, let me give you 5 sources of income. Number one, the national park, you can actually entertain some tourism, limited amount, right? And this tourism will involve entrance fees. You can sell, right, the entrance ticket. Or you can actually give a license to an operator with 20 years of running the park. Then you can collect the 20 years income immediately, right? And secondly, there are some, tourist attractions. For example, you have a cable car, which can go up to the mountain. And the cable car operator will charge money, and you will charge the cable car company some fees and revenues and royalties and so on. The second income. Thirdly, you probably need a couple of hotels, right? And the hotel will have to apply a license from the government, and the government will charge the licensing, yeah? And fourthly, it's a water. I think in a national park, there must be very clean water, yeah? And these water can be bottled and named as from Himalaya, and it can be selling very high price in some other countries, yeah, with brand name, so water. And the fifth one is agro-business. Yeah, within the national park, you may actually find a couple of places where you can grow herbs, which is high value added. So with 5 income plus carbon credit, this project will become bankable.
Michael, you want to add, or I will say that we have around hardly 4 minutes, and I want to hear the last views from each speakers within a minute.
I would only be repeating what was just said. And there are a lot of people that find it abhorrent to think of conservation in a commercial sense, or a national park in a commercial sense. But to think we can only live on new income from carbon credits is probably a fallacy, because the way the legal system and the science system and the accounting system is, they're likely to be commoditized. So like you said, they're $4 a ton for avoidance of disrupting the existing forest. So the 6th income and the 7th income and the 8th income belong to you and your imagination and your creativity. But what you're actually doing is you're creating the biodiversity co-benefits that have additional value, and you need to monetize those.
Thank you. I think we have come to our last round, and I still want to give a floor to each panelist to have your last say on what we have been discussing. So may I now go to Harry? Within 30 seconds, I would be good to,
In 10 seconds, I'd like just to add to what Dr. Ma has said, and Michael said, and Chimi has said. It is a bit of a conundrum in the case of Bhutan, in the sense that you have done such good, whereas in the case of the carbon projects that I'm working with, it's the opposite. We're looking at a rate of deforestation that is abhorrent and very difficult to manage. So what we're hoping to do is to establish a precedent to demonstrate to the government, whether it's state government or the federal government, that there is an alternative to cutting trees. There are other forms of revenue streams, and the co-benefits that are available are actually quite tangible, and we aim to prove that, and we should be able to do that in very short order, given the maturity of the projects. I think that Bhutan is in a unique position where you have a negative carbon position that is value. And there is an opportunity where you could sell that negative value to other countries that have a positive emission.
Thank you. Thank you. I go to Dr. Ma within 30 seconds, if you are.
Yeah, I want to touch upon spirituality. I think it can make money too. Why? Because it can be the most important attraction for tourism. most people, including my Chinese fellows, I think will be so attracted to explore Bhutan because of spirituality, because of the happiness, because of peace, because of harmony. So if you can design a package to attract more tourists, then money will come for financing the tourism infrastructure, including hotel, airports, and all of these. And we can make sure these new infrastructure are green, sustainable in nature, and do not endanger the nature.
Thank you, Chimi.
My last remarks is very simple. We have a vision, we have our plans. We have many plans, in fact. National Adaptation Plan, a long-term low-emission development strategy, and roadmaps for them. So there we have a bankable project. Of course, like there are different types of, there are different definitions about the bankable project. So we welcome projects, we welcome investors. As I said, like show us the money, but not in a form of charity. But let's work together to finance our nation building process, finance our climate actions, and finance our development, and finance the operationalization of gross national happiness. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Ma showed you the money. Don't let go. Don't commoditize it. You have a sacred obligation to make your sovereign fund work, store up your surplus, and identify countries that will trade on the same ethical basis, and you'll meet their liabilities with your growing assets.
Thank you so much, the esteemed panelists. I enjoy moderating this session. I'm not going to sum it up. I want all you all to reflect, think about it, and be happy. Thank you so much.